So back in the summer of 2008 was when I made a really huge decision to quit my job and move to Norway for a man that I had only known for about like, I want to say 6 months. At first, I was like, should I even share this story? Because it happened a while ago now. I mean, it's been almost 20 years. At the time, I think I was like 27 or 28, and I'm 45 now. So just thinking back at that time, when I was making this decision to move, I had already been in Florida for 10 years. So that was my home. I had built a life in Florida. I was working a full-time job where I got to travel a lot for this job. I was a project manager for this audience response company. So for me to decide to quit this job and move was a pretty big decision. One, because I had only known this man for 6 months. Two, it's not like I had like this huge savings where if things didn't work out, I'd be like, oh yeah, I can just move back and start back all over again. Like, no, like if I quit this job and move there, I wasn't going to be able to work there because I didn't have a work visa. So it's not like I would be saving up money. So yeah, there was a lot to consider besides just, being in love and everything would be okay. I did have some worry that, okay, if things didn't work out, this would really bite me in the ass and really, really regret, the decision I made. So yeah, it was a pretty big decision for me to leave my life in Florida and move to Norway. I was in love, and when you're in love, you do crazy things. And yes, this was a crazy decision I made. So, how did we meet? So, we met through a mutual friend at a birthday party. I was living in Tampa at the time, and that's where I was working. And so, I went to my friend's birthday party. And the man that I met, he was home for the holidays because this was, I think, in December. And he was living in Norway, but he was home for the holidays. And that's where I met him. I keep saying man, Ryan is his name. We kind of hung out a little bit, not for very long. I think we hung out a couple times after we met at the birthday party. And after that, we kept in touch through Skype. It was Skype back then. I remember I had a really crappy laptop and it didn't have a camera. He helped me find a cheap camera. So basically, we kept in touch and we chatted, I want to say almost daily. And when I had my first break from work, I decided to go visit him in Norway and kind of get a feel for what it was like there. I can't remember if we had already kind of talked about. I think maybe he had thrown the idea out there like, hey, why don't you come move here? But I thought like, oh, this is a chance, to kind of see what it was like there. I really liked Norway. It was quiet, it was beautiful, and I loved spending time with him. We got along great. And then of course I went back because I had to go back to work. And what happened next? Obviously we continued to keep talking, having this long distance relationship. I know he kept asking, like, hey, would you consider moving here? And I just kept thinking, like, if I move, I mean, there's so many things that I would have to take care of. One, I need to figure out, well, what am I going to do with my car? Because I can't just leave it. I'm not going to put it in storage. Two, I had student loans. So I was like, okay, well, if I move to Norway, who's going to pay my student loans? I don't have all these savings. I was paying my student loans by the work I was currently doing. So if all of a sudden I move, I won't be able to pay my student loans. So, what am I going to do about that? And then all my stuff. I didn't have a whole lot of stuff, but I did have enough to where I needed a place to store some of my stuff. I think I probably had like 5 plastic bins of stuff I didn't want to give up. It's mostly like photos, little things here and there that I, just couldn't part ways with and I had nowhere to put it. I mean, obviously, yes, I can put it in storage. But again, I'm moving into another country and I just wasn't feeling comfortable putting things in storage, just little things like that. I kind of like talked through these things with him and he made it very easy, I guess I want to say, because he was like, oh, well, you can drop that off at my parents' house or my parents have a big lot. You can leave your car there. So I was like, okay, if your parent, I've never met his parents. He told me he'd been talking to his parents about me. So, it's not like going to be a big surprise and that he would talk to them. From where I was living, they live like 7 hours away. So I would have to drive, 7 hours to take my stuff there if this plan was going to really go through. There was a lot of convincing involved. He really had to convince me that everything was going to be okay. And like these things that I was worried about would be taken care of and it wasn't really that big of a deal. So I want to say like we have this discussion probably for like a few months after I had visited him. Once all everything was kind of like talked through, then I felt more and more comfortable. Like, okay, we've got a good plan of where all my stuff was going to go and how my expenses were going to be handled. But my next step was really to make the move. And I did tell, my job that I was quitting. They were not very happy about it. That kind of sucks because I had a great relationship with them, but they were very upset that I was leaving. So they were not happy about that. Told my close friends and they were surprised. And then I told my sister. I had already made up my mind that I was doing this. And so it was kind of like when I told them, it wasn't like, hey, so I'm thinking about doing this. I'm like, hey, so I'm leaving. Packed up everything. And then I drove 7 hours to drop off my stuff at his parents' house. That's when I first met them. They were lovely. And then the next day I flew to Norway. So when I got to Norway, it was summer. And then Brian also had like a little summer break. We spent some time and took a trip to Greece. I believe we went to this island I believe it's called Skoplos. It was the island where I didn't even know this until I got there, but it was an island where they shot Mamma Mia. So like all the little stores it went into, like they would have, pictures of like the set from Mamma Mia. And it was a really nice vacation. It was our first vacation together. And it was really fun. We stayed in this cute little hotel, or I kind of want to say like a boutique hotel. And we spent most of our time there. And then, we rented a scooter and rode around the island. So yeah, it was really relaxing and like the perfect, getaway for the both of us. And then after that vacation, we went back to Norway. In the beginning, it was great, but I think after like a month or so, I was really starting to get bored because he would be working and, because I couldn't work, I'd be so bored. And gosh, sometimes I think like, man, I wish back then there was like YouTube and blogging because I would have had something to do. So YouTube and blogging was around back then, but it's not what it is today. If it was like the way it is today, I probably would have done it. Then I wouldn't have been bored, but it wasn't. It wasn't around then. So the area that I was in was a pretty small town, so there wasn't really much to do around there. And the one thing that I got really into was Guitar Hero, and it sounds so silly, but literally I would play that all day. And I became such an expert at Guitar Hero, which is so sad, like talking about this, but I was really good at it. I mean, that probably kept me sane, was playing Guitar Hero. And then I couldn't wait for Brian to come home because then we would play it for hours. Like literally, we would just play Guitar Hero for hours and then we go to bed. Like I was obsessed with Guitar Hero. So thank you, Guitar Hero, because I don't know what I would have done without you. So obviously, just having Guitar Hero wasn't going to keep me sane. So I think me being bored and just frustrated that I couldn't do anything, and I was taking it out on Brian, and it was not good for our relationship. And I knew that if this continued, that our relationship would just decline. Like it wasn't going to go anywhere good. So we both made the decision that it's probably best that when the next break comes, we go back to Florida, I stay behind, and then, he would have to go back to Norway to finish out his contract. So holidays came around, we both went home to Florida, and then we had a nice winter break, and then he went back to Florida. I mean, sorry, he went back to Norway, and then I decided to move to Sacramento. Oh, actually, I forgot to say, so before Brian went back to Norway and before I went to Sacramento, we did get married. And no, we did not have like a big wedding. We just basically went to the courthouse and got married there. We didn't bring any friends or family. It was just the two of us. I know, like, it's so not like this big celebration. It was just like the two of us. Even if I wanted a wedding, it wasn't really possible. He lives in Norway. He had to be back right away for his work. All my family lives, in Japan. And his family lives in Florida. It's just like, where would we even have this wedding if we wanted a wedding? By the way, so we got married in Florida. You can't just get married that day. You have to go to the courthouse, put in paperwork saying you want to get married, and then 3 days later you go back and then you're allowed to get married. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I believe like there was something like, oh, if you take like a quick course, you can get married right away. But if you're not going to take this course, then you have to wait 3 days. But anyway, so we waited 3 days and then went back. And then and then we got married. And then he went to Norway, and then I went to Sacramento. What? Why Sacramento? So a very good friend of mine, he happened to move not too long ago to Sacramento, and he had recently bought a condo and had an extra room. He offered to rent out the extra room to me, and I took it. I took the offer. Drove cross country. A good thing, Brian's parents kept my car. Took my car to Sacramento. And yeah, so that is where I decided to stay put until I was able to reunite with Brian again. So when I was in Sacramento, I immediately, started looking for jobs because I'm like, okay, now I can work. I can do something. And oh my gosh, I was having the hardest time finding a job. This was in 2008. So this was during the big financial, what do you call that time? The financial collapse or financial crisis? Actually, look it up. What did they call this time? Great Recession. So I don't know. Maybe that had something to do with why I was having such a difficult time finding a job. I mean, it's not like I didn't have any work history. I had been working, for 10 years. I've had, I had a work history of video editing, worked at a financial institution. Then I was a project manager in Tampa before I left to Norway. So, it's not like I didn't have, an experience. That meant every day I was just like sending out so many resumes, didn't even get one call back or one interview. So after like a month of this, I started getting a little bit depressed. Did I just make a huge mistake? I left my job to go to Norway, but then now I'm back because I couldn't work in Norway and now I can't even find a job. I was starting to get really worried. Like, did I just make a huge mistake with everything? Looking back now, if I had a daughter and she was like, I am moving, quitting my job and like just moving to another country for a man I just met, I would be like, you are not moving. But it was different for me. I also can't believe at that time I asked for so little input from others. But then again, it's like, okay, well, I was doing everything on my own since I was 18 anyways. So why then would I want input on something when I've been doing everything by myself until then? So I guess it was just like another thing that I'm doing by myself. So what's the big deal? It was kind of like how I took it. Looking back, it could have been a disaster. But moving to Norway did lead to marriage. But then leaving Norway, kind of left me to find my identity again without the relationship. That was a little bit hard because, I had left everything to be with him and now I'm not with him. But I am with him because I am married, but I'm not like in the same place with him. But we both knew that it was not good that I wasn't able to work because it was driving me crazy. But then I'm, driving myself crazy not being able to work in Sacramento. And after about a month of looking, Brian suggested that I email a couple photos to a modeling agency. That is a crazy idea. I'm 28. Who's going to want to sign someone that age? Like, to me, like, modeling was a young person's game. But I was like, what do I have to lose? Submit photos and then I'll get a response, whatever. It's just like another resume I sent, like the dozens of other resumes I sent where I was getting no response. So this is just another one. But surprisingly, I get an email back from the agency I submitted to come meet with them in San Francisco because that's where the agency was. There weren't any agencies in Sacramento. Well, there were, but they're very small agencies. And I was like, well, if I'm going to submit photos to an agency, I'm going to go big and I'm going to go for like the biggest agency. And the biggest one was in San Francisco. And that is where the next completely unplanned chapter of my life began. Right, Zoe?